Good morning. I'm Angela Cochran. As Joe said, I'm the Director of Journals at the American Society of Civil Engineers. So ASCE, just a little bit about us as a society. We were founded in 1852 and are the oldest civil engineering organization with about 150,000 members worldwide. Our revenue comes mostly from, is split up almost in equal thirds between publications, membership, and then conferences and continuing education. ASCE as the publisher, we publish journals, books, a database, and a society membership magazine. So within our journals program, we have 35 journal titles, launching our 36th submission site as we speak. We have one retired journal. It's very, very, very difficult to kill a journal out of society, so that's actually one of my crowning glories. And one title that we do not own, but we distribute on behalf of another publisher on our ASCE library platform. So we started publishing way back in 1872 with the transactions of ASCE, which are literally transcripts of meetings where people would come and talk about the really cool projects they were doing. And in 1956, they spun the transactions off into the journals of specific divisions of ASCE. So those journals are celebrating their 60th anniversary as standalone journals this year. So we get in about 12,000 submissions and publish about 3,500 papers per year. We have seen a 68% increase in submissions in the last 5 years. And that is one of our publication challenges coming up on the challenges slide. We have all volunteer editors. None of them are paid. So with our editors and our associate editors, it fluctuates from about 750 to 900 members of ASCE that participate in the journals in that way. The thing about the journals program in ASCE to keep in mind is that ASCE is very much an organization for practicing engineers. Academics is actually a very small percentage of our members. So we don't tend to have an awful lot of interaction or go between the membership, the core members, and the journals program. We also don't give any journals to our members, so it's not a member benefit. Print and online is available for most of our titles. However, the 2 journals that we launched last year and the journal that we're launching for next year are online only. So our business model, as I mentioned, we don't give them to members, but we do have member and institutional subscriptions, and our member subscriptions are really only about 77% of our subscribers, and they get a 75% discount off the list price. And mostly it's academic institutions with some government and corporate subscriptions to our packages, the bulk of them being our all journals subscription. So that includes all journals, as one would imagine, but we've also been able to, as we've put more content onto our platform, we have a very easy add-on for our conference proceedings, and now that we've put ebooks on the platform as well, we have an all ASCE subscription product available. Again, print online and print plus online are still available for most of the titles. Some people ask why we're still doing print, and the reason is that it still represents a nice chunk of income that we do not think we would recuperate if we did not have print. We still send an awful lot of print titles to China, and most of our members who have subscriptions have about 40 years of print journals sitting on their shelves, and so they will continue to purchase print. We offer our journals on a pay-per-view, also a library card, which is basically bulk prepaid downloads. This is very popular with individuals because civil engineering is very interdisciplinary. So it would be difficult for a practicing engineer to say, I need just the structural engineering journal. They might need articles from multiple locations. So we sell the library cards, which in 5 and 20 download denominations, which cuts down the per article fee, but also allows them to choose a journal article, ebook chapters, or conference papers. So we don't limit it just to the journal articles. We have a larger version of this called ASC Library on Demand that we sell to corporations. So that would be 100, 200, 500 downloads, depending on the size of their organization. And we do get a little bit of income coming from hybrid OA, although it is less than 1% of the papers that we publish. So I'll just mention a little bit about our books program because it is important, and particularly our standards. So we do publish over 4,000 conference papers a year onto our platform. Many of these are ASCE's own conferences. We don't have like one big annual meeting like a lot of other places. We have many technical conferences based on the discipline. And then we also publish conference proceedings with other groups that ASCE has somehow affiliated themselves with. And they're available by the paper in the library, and as I mentioned, a subscription product is available for the conference proceedings. Our standards are our #1 selling book product, and they are available in print and online through ASC Library and also other standards distributors. We do not make them available by the chapter because engineers think it's a very bad idea to only purchase one chapter of a standard. And they're probably right. I would prefer that they not only deal with the wind loads, but also the snow loads when they're building, making buildings. So those are not available by the chapter, but they are available as ebooks, and we are building out a dedicated platform specifically for some of our bigger standards. I'll talk about that in a second. We also publish technical reports and manuals of practice, and these are authored by ASCE committees. They're available in print and online, also by the chapter. Nobody buys chapters. If you're going to put your ebooks online, definitely put them in by the chapter and do the chapter metadata for discoverability, but don't be shocked when nobody buys chapters. Pretty much everybody does the upsell and just buys the book. We have subscription and perpetual access models available to institutions to purchase our ebooks online. We've got, I think it's about 425 of them online now. And they're also available through some other distributors. And then just to mention our civil engineering database, which is a bibliographic database of everything we've ever published. We just moved it to an XML platform, so we've got a little more variability in how we can use the content. It is free to use. It is enormously popular with librarians, and it drives a lot of traffic to our ASC library site. So we have our platform with our journals from 1982 to the present, our conference papers from 2000 to the present, a 10-year archive of the member magazine, as well as collections. So collections are basically just curated lists of content that we do for promotional purposes. Usually with a conference coming up, we'll say here are 10 or 15 articles from past conferences or related journals. So I wanted to talk for a minute about some of the challenges that our program faces, and a lot of these I'm sure will be similar to challenges that you face. One being that we have an awful lot of competition, not just for subscriptions, but also for our authors and for our editors. And, a lot of civil engineers, ASCE is not necessarily their primary society. There's a gazillion smaller societies, depending on what kind of engineer you are. And a lot of those have their own journals and publications. So we not only compete with the Elsevier's and the Wileys and the Taylor and Francises of the world, but also with smaller organizations. We've seen the large increase in submissions, which has been difficult to manage. It's just a lot of papers, and we don't have a lot of extra resources. So even though we have a 70% rejection rate, as you know, every one of those papers costs us money and time. So when I talk about there being too many papers coming in and what we should do about it, everybody who works at another organization says, well, why don't you open a cascading peer review open access journal? That's like the smartest thing you could do, except engineers don't see any value in open access journals. In fact, they tell me that when they get emails that say anything about open in the subject line, they immediately delete them. So we have tested this out, and we've talked to various people, and just at this point in time, our community is not ready for open access, and they really hated the idea of cascading peer review, so we're sort of moving on from that, but that is not available to us. Yes? Do you know why? They think it's an inferior quality. We are mandated to publish journals and books for which there may be no regard to the revenue potential. So we serve as the publications group as having to publish anything that our membership comes up with. And so we do publish a lot of books and journals that don't make a dime and really only cost us. So that's something also that's a challenge. Public access mandates for federally funded work. I don't actually have a very good handle on how much of our work is funded by the U.S. government because I've yet to keep an intern long enough to troll through the acknowledgments of a gazillion papers to figure it out. But I'm working on that. So we're just sort of waiting to see what happens. Google I put down as a challenge to the program. Google is a love it, hate it situation. We all love Google and jump through every hoop that Google throws in our direction to make sure that we are discoverable. At the same time, Google loves to show people the freest version of our content they can find in that very first link. And so I would consider Google to be a challenge. And then incorporation by reference for standards. There is a lawsuit pending that says anytime a standard is adopted as part of a law, like a building code, that the standard has to be made publicly available along with the law. We are fighting the lawsuit, but we're also looking at ways to divvy up our content. In standards, there's commentary that explains the standards, which is insanely popular, and then you have the actual nuts and bolts of the standards, which is sort of like the recipe. We've been separating those out in the content so that we can, if we have to, we can make the standard available without making the commentary available. There are internal mandates and competing priorities of the organization. I was just talking to someone about lobbying. We talked this morning, there was a little bit about lobbying. Our government affairs group is interested in lobbying Congress and does a great job of it, but what they're lobbying Congress for is money for infrastructure development. They are not lobbying Congress about public access mandates and embargo periods. We have limited access to business intelligence, which may come easier to some of the larger organizations or commercial publishers. And keeping abreast of technology has definitely been a challenge. We do not have dedicated IT staff for our publications division, so we are kind of on our own. And the biggest place where we have found issues with this is with e-commerce. Multiple platforms, trying to integrate it with our account management system or our constituent management system has been challenging. We have built our e-commerce 3 times, and it's still not right, so there will be a 4th time. But we are also building out 2 other platforms, and we have to figure out how all of this is going to move seamlessly. The potential advantages we have as a society, of course, is that we have legacy content, lots and lots of legacy content, as I mentioned, back to the mid-1800s, and so taking advantage of that is important. The standards adopted by international building codes is something that is ASCE's advantage alone. Lots of loyal members. And access to people. Anytime I have a conversation with a commercial publisher about projects that they would like to partner with us on, it becomes abundantly clear to me that what they don't have access to are the 150,000 members of ASCE, and they very much would like to have access to them. So that's something that we have that is a potential advantage for us. We benefit from a not-for-profit tax structure, as all of you know, and then the reputation and brand awareness globally. Whenever our international or global relations group goes to another country, the first question they ask is how many of you have published in an ASCE journal, and that's really the starting point of the conversation. So our commercial strategy is really around building an architecture around our digital content that focuses on tools for individuals. Whether it's an expert network, an author network that people can find experts in different fields, the standards platform, mapping tools, things that we think the average engineer could really take advantage of. Building tools and apps that are must-haves for the engineering community, and they really need to be scalable because some engineering firms have 5 people and some have 5,000 people that are spread all over the world, and so we need multi-site licenses and all kinds of access controls, not just username and password, but username and password and IP access so people can personalize the tools that we provide for them. We're interested in curated collections on topics that cut across journal disciplines, so you can talk about like risk and reliability, life cycle costs of different projects, and this goes across all of the different journal disciplines. And then the standards platform. So our standards platform is being built out on an XML database, and we'll have ancillary tools like load maps so that engineers can actually type in the zip code or the GPS coordinates of where they would like to put a building, and they will be given not only the wind loads, the snow loads, the tsunami loads, the seismic loads, anything that they're going to need. And these are very important tools for our engineering community. And hold on, there was one more thing. Multiple versioning, that's also important for engineers. They have to actually state which version of standards they used when they were building things. They have to cite the journal articles they may have consulted with because they get sued a lot, and so this is sort of important. We created, and now we're working on deploying a unique taxonomy for connecting our users to our content in a more manageable way or meaningful way. I'm looking for opportunities to partner with other organizations. As I mentioned, there's a ton of smaller societies that maybe have one journal, maybe a conference proceeding, and if it's getting harder for us to be publishers, it's getting to be impossible for them to be publishers. And so reaching out to them and finding those organizations and seeing if we can actually be a publishing service for them. And ensuring that all of our content can be combined and mashed up. This was all fine when we have our books and our journals and our standards all in the ASC library, but now we're also reaching out for these other platforms, and so we have this challenge of making sure that it's all seamless for people. And we need to monetize what we can, which is sort of a duh moment, but there are times when we think of something really great and then we can't figure out how, from either a technology standpoint, we're going to charge for it, or even, what the usefulness of charging for different things. So monetizing what we have is important. And then I'll end with just some strategic pitfalls that we're desperately trying to avoid. One of which is joining the arms race, which we're never, on features, which we're never going to win. So we're never going to have more cool things for authors or more cool things for readers than a large platform like SciVal or Web of Science have, and so we really need to stop trying to compete with that. We're trying not to assume that our community is the same as others. So just because something is very popular and acceptable in one society does not mean that our organization is our members are going to support that. This is not a if you build it, they will come scenario. We have to build the things that they're actually going to use. And so we've been spending a lot more time looking at that. And then I used to believe that with engineering, civil engineering content, because there's big chunks of it in several places. We have a big chunk, ASME has a big chunk, IEEE, and then you've got like Elsevier and Summit Wiley and Taylor and Francis. And I used to think that the group that had the most content at the end of the day was going to win. I don't really believe that anymore because we keep launching journals and and we keep publishing more content, and we're not any closer to winning. So now I think being more strategic about our content and making sure that we serve our members in that way is the most important. And that is it. So thank you for letting me share what our commercial strategy is and how we think we will stay viable into the future.